In the spring of 1979, on April 5th, Margaret Ann Bredemeyer Ehrman sat down with Irene Dowdy Markert to reminisce about her life through trials and triumphs that she and her family faced throughout the years. The following are excerpts from that conversation.
April the 5th? 1979.
Yes,
Right.
1979.
And I'm talking with Dottie, Irene Markert, about the family history. Okay.
This is Grandpa Reynolds,
Right.
E.H. Reynolds.
Right.
And he was a,
Chaplain?
he was chaplain of the Florida Senate
Mm.
one time. And he was also a surveyor and surveyed a lot of the property and streets in the city of Leesburg during their early years in Florida. Grandma Reynolds, Margaret Catherine Reynolds, was a school teacher.
Now, what was her maiden name?
Cox.
Oh, yes. Okay,
Cox,
she's the Cox.
Margaret
family.
Cox. And Grandpa Reynolds met her on his way to in the Civil War. And he met her because he spent the night at her father's house. And he met her, and he fell in love with her, and he made her promise to wait until he got out of the army, and then they would get married, which she did.
Oh,
They corresponded during the time they were he was in the war, in the service. And then they got married and lived in Tennessee, in Paris, Tennessee. And until all the children were born in Tennessee. Mother, which was your mother's mother and my mother, was just a young girl when they moved to Florida. I don't remember exactly what age when they moved to Florida. And they moved up here in Sumter County and lived there then for many years. Until she lived there till she died, and he lived in Jacksonville till he died. Mm-hmm. So they really lived in Florida all the rest of their lives. Then the Markerts, now this is Grandpa Markert. Mm-hmm. He was born in New York. And he went with the group that left New York. It was a religious group, something on the order of the Quakers, on that order. And he went from New York out to Cedar Rapids, Iowa with that group, and they established their what is now their Manor refrigeration company.
Really?
And he was in that. He was in that for a while. He didn't stay
in. He was with that religious group?
Well, he was with that group, yeah. Okay. But he didn't stay too long with them after they moved to Cedar Rapids. Because he withdrew from them and went into Cedar Rapids and went into business for himself. Mm-hmm. Which he ran a general store. Grandma Markert was born in Bohemia, and they came to this country when she was just one story I heard was she was just a few months old. Another one was she was about 13 years old, but I don't know which is right. But I imagine when she was quite young, because there were 13 children, I think, in the family. And Grandma Mary, her name was, can't think of it right now, but I'll think of it. And Aunt Cora was her youngest sister. She was the oldest, and she's the youngest in the family. In the family. There were brothers and sisters in between. I have another picture.
Well, now, this isn't their children. This is her younger sister?
This is the younger sister. But this is my father, which is their oldest child, and this is his brother. Those are Grandpa and Grandma Markert's two children.
So they were raised together with Cora?
Well, she stayed with them for a while, and then she left and went back to Cedar Rapids, I think. I don't know how long she stayed with them, but she lived with them for a while. When she was about this age. I think that was the time they moved, when they were living here in Florida, that she was with them. I don't know whether she was up north or not.
I didn't realize that. So this is Carl C.
Frederick Carl.
Frederick Carl.
This is Frederick William, I think his second name was, F.W. And Dad's was F. Carl.
Mm-hmm.
And
this, his brother?
well, his brother's name was Frank.
Frank, that's right.
So then Dad and Mother grew up together and went to school together in Florida.
All right, how did the Markerts get to Florida?
Well, they just
From
picked up,
Cedar
moved.
Rapids.
They just moved down to Florida like tourists would. And
You don't know what year that was, or?
It was about in well, let's see. It was in early part of 1880s or something like that. I don't know just what year.
But grandfather, Fred C.
Was born in Cedar Rapids.
Was born in Cedar Rapids.
Cedar Rapids.
And he went to Livewood, Florida?
Wildwood,
Florida.
Yeah.
When he was a young boy then.
Yes, and they went to school. He and Mother went to school together out in a country school.
Mm.
And Grandpa opened a big department store the first department store there was ever in Sumter County.
Hmm.
And he ran that business, and then he had the business in Cedar Rapids at the same time. And he, between the two stores. But Dad was grown by that time, and they were married. And I was born in Wildwood after they were married. This is Mother's wedding dress.
You don't remember the year they were married?
Well, I was born in 1890. They were married in 1895. Because I was born in 1897. And Brother was born in 1899. And so this is Mother and Dad, my mother and Dad here. And this is her brother. He was a great lover of horses and used to have a stable, that's Uncle Leon.
Oh, that's Uncle Leon. I remember Uncle Leon.
Well,
he was so
him.
tall.
Yes, that's him. And this is my father here with your mother. So when she was born, that's me. These two are me. This is your mother.
She was born in 1906.
Six. And Edwin was born in 1904. And Brother in 1897, 1899. I was born in 1897. And this is the four of us. I think that's a cute picture of your mother.
It is.
And then we moved to Louisville. This was about the age we were when we moved to Louisville, Kentucky. And these are pictures that we took up there. Well, this was taken in Wildwood. This is a little neighbor boy lived right across the street from us, and the four of us. And these were taken in Louisville. Now, this was the only time Grandpa and Grandma Markert visited us while we were in Kentucky. After we moved away from Wildwood, they went out to Iowa, and they came back through Kentucky. The year before, he graduated from the seminary in Louisville.
Now, do you remember visits from
Sure.
your grandparents?
Because I was big like that, you see.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember.
Did they come often when you were in Florida? No, when you were in
Well,
Florida.
when we in Florida, the store was like where the lodge is. And we lived like where it's over here in this apartment here. So it was just across the corner of the park that we, so we knew, grew up with them until I was that age, you see.
When you went to Louisville.
So I remember them. Your mother probably wouldn't remember them so much.
She talked about grandmother a lot.
Yes.
Grandmother Markert.
Well, she remembered her probably, because I don't think she ever saw Grandpa Markert. I know she didn't, because after we moved from Florida, she was only 3 years old, and then when we came back, and we were 4 years in Louisville, then we came back to Macon in 1913, and he passed away in 13, so she never saw him again, you see, so she wouldn't have remembered him.
Well, then maybe she's talking about Grandma Reynolds that she remembered.
Well, she would, and I guess so. Grandma Markert came to see us once when they went to the funeral, Grandpa's funeral out in Cedar Rapids. They came back through Macon and visited us for this day or two or something, like a couple of days maybe. She might remember that. She was about 7 then.
But she said that
Grandma
was a
Reynolds.
grandma.
Well, that was Grandma Reynolds.
Yeah,
Used
close
to come
by all the
yes,
time.
That was Grandma Reynolds that lived in Leesburg, and she used to come down to Tampa to see us. Now, these are Earl and Edwin, and these are Uncle John's two boys.
Oh.
And these are his two girls, Uncle John's two girls, and that's your mother and me. Now, these are pictures that were taken in Macon. This was just before, not long before we left Macon and went to the Canaries. We went to Lumpkin and then went to the Canaries. This is Grandma Reynolds.
Okay, you went from Macon to Lumpkin.
And stayed there a year and a half till the war was over.
Mm-hmm.
And that was your sister, 12 years old.
That
I mean,
was
your,
the war?
your mother. I keep saying your sister, my sister, but your mother. This was brother just before we left Macon to go to Lumpkin. He didn't go to Lumpkin with us because they got married, you see.
Oh, uh-huh.
And these are just little pictures that I had of us.
I'll never forget my trip to Lumpkin, Georgia. I'll never
Uh-huh.
forget that. That
Uh-huh.
was just one of those happenings that you
Uh-huh.
never forget.
I didn't remember that you'd been to
Yes,
Lumpkin.
Mother and Daddy
Took you.
sidetracked
Mm-hmm.
and took us to Lumpkin. I remember it so clearly.
And
I stood in the pulpit where Grandfather had
Yes,
stood and everything.
And did you see our picture that was
Wonderful.
in the church there?
Yes.
They
Yes.
say it's still there.
Oh.
They thought so much of all of us as a family, you know. Now these are the cousins. This is Cora.
Now, you're back in the States now.
Yeah.
So, let's see, you came back into Tampa.
1922.
1922, okay.
November of 22.
And you went right to Tampa
Yes.
and found a place?
Well, we landed in Port Tampa because the boats didn't come into Tampa at that time. They landed at Port Tampa. And then we went by train from Port Tampa into Tampa. And the old railroad station there is where we got off there. And we walked up a block. We didn't have any money. Enough money to pay for one room for a week. And that was all the money we had when we landed in Tampa. And not a roof over our head, and all the clothes we had were in just the trunks that we brought. Didn't have another thing in the world. When I look around and see what all we have here that the Lord has given us, you just can hardly believe when we landed in Tampa without anything. Not a penny, without a roof over our head for anything.
You never worried?
No.
No?
Oh, some of the children will come back to see us. One boy came not too long ago, and he said, I can remember when we didn't have so-and-so, and he said, next day we had it. And that was true.
Yeah.
It was just one miracle after another, all the years that we've been to work. And those leaflets that I gave you in that book, in that thing, will tell you, it tells you a lot about it. And so we walked up a block, and lo and behold, the man and the lady that ran a rooming house were friends that Mother and Dad knew back in the middle of Florida years ago. I don't remember their names, but they did. Well, they put us on the train at midnight and sent us up to Reynolds' home up in Leesburg because they didn't have enough money to pay for anything, food or anything else there. And Mother and Dad rented that room and stayed there for the week. And then they got on the streetcar and rode out to the car line and saw this big building where we lived in Tampa. And the children's home was in at that time because they were building a new children's home in Tampa. And they were moving out, I think, the next week. And then Mother and Dad took over the building. And a check came that it had been sent to the Canary Islands and forwarded back to us here. And in the check was a friend of ours in New York City. Now this is how, in Baltimore, Maryland, this was how the Lord took care of things. In it was $125. And the letter read, it's $25 for each one of the family. Well, Mother and Dad said that they were almost tempted to take that $100 and put it down for the month's rent for the big building that they were going to take. And they said no, they couldn't do it because it was designated for Edwin and Shug and me too, you know. And we were up there in Leesburg, stranded with no money or anything. Edwin couldn't get to Macon because he didn't have the money to get up there to get to his brother and get him a job. And we were stranded there, and we stayed with Auntie and Uncle Reuben and the children. And Edwin worked there on the farm for 2 or 3 weeks there just to help out, and we helped around. And so they sent us the money, and that gave us the trip to Macon and back. Your mother and me, and gave Edwin the $25 to go and get started in Macon on what he was going to do.
For goodness.
And then the money came in for the first month's rent.
How did that happen?
Well,
I don't remember.
Well, it was just sent to Mother and Dad. It was sent to them in the mail. Somebody that had known us in the Canaries and sent to us. And it wasn't designated for the work in the Canaries at all. It was designated to us personally, so they could use it for that way. Then we paid that month's rent and the next month's rent, $100 a month. You know, got a great big 3-story building, nothing in it, empty. Every room was empty. We had a bed apiece to sleep on, which we had gone down to the store and just charged it, I guess. I don't know, I suppose they charged us. Got a bed apiece to sleep on, and that was all we had, and a little bit of an oil stove. And we rented that great big 3-story building in Tampa. And before we moved from there, it was full to overflowing flowing with beds and everything. We had 104 children and 12 workers. And they all didn't have any money to pay for any of it except as it came in. Well, anyway, the third month, no rent. The $100 didn't come. The man we were renting from came out, no rent. Couldn't pay it. It came out again, no rent. Came out again, no rent. Well, he didn't force it on us or anything, you know. And finally, we wondered why the rent hadn't come when it hadn't been coming, and money had been coming in before when we went to Canaries to take care of things. We paid, I've forgotten how much we paid for rent over there for this big house that we were in there. But we had to pay rent on it, and it always came in. Well, anyway, we had a lot down here at Safety Harbor. And Mother and Dad had bought years before we even went to Louisville. And they hoped someday to have a home on it, on the water, because it was the Gulf that went around there by Safety Harbor. So they had bought that lot. Well, that was the only thing in the world that we owned. We didn't have another thing anyway. So we all got together and talked about it. We'd go down and sell that lot. That would pay our rent. So we did. We went down and sold that lot for $500, and that paid our rent. We stayed there 5.5 years, and never one time did the man come up to get the rent that we didn't have it. 5.5 years from then on. And that was the last piece of thing that we owned, was that $500. Well, and then this similar circumstance happened out here when we moved out here. But I'll catch up with that from the go. Now, that's St. Cora. This is the picture. You can't see very good that.
Yes, I can.
And this is the 3 generations. My father and Earl and his little boy, Fred. And this is Fred when he's grown. This is Arlene.
So that's how Uncle Ed got started in Macon. He went to be with his brother Earl, who had already established himself
while you went
to the Canaries.
That's right.
And he married Emmy.
Yeah. Now this is Earl and Emmy, you see.
Now, do you remember when they married? What
They
year?
married in 1918. In July, they married on July the 14th, and Emmy was 18. No, she was 19 on July the 17th, and brother was 19 on July the 26th. And her birthday is the 17th of July. Mother's was the 17th of September. Brother's was the 26th of July, and my father's was 26th of September.
Now, where did he meet Emmy? In
Well, when we moved to Macon, you see, brother was, I was 16 and he was 14. And they went to high school together. And they went together from the time they were 14 till they were 18. Yeah, they'd get mad at each other every now and then, go to somebody else, but they always went back together again. And this is brother and Arlene, and that's brother and Fred. That's Fred when he's grown. That's Arlene. That's Bob. Now this is Edwin and Elizabeth, and that's Eddie. Now there are pictures in there, probably of some of the others, but in here, because I couldn't get them all in, you know, other pictures in there. And this is Fred and Emmy and Arlene and
Eddie.
And
Uncle Ed and
Elizabeth. You don't have that.
Those are
I
beautiful.
think that Betty Earl has one, I think. But if she doesn't, I have another one for her. I'm going to write and ask her about it.
Oh,
That's yours.
beautiful.
And that's your mother sitting up in the tree.
Oh, I would love to have these framed.
Well, you can have them. You can
Yeah,
get frames for them.
nice
Mhm.
old frames if I can find some. You have no idea how much those pictures you gave to me of Mother and Daddy sitting on the swing, and one of my grandmother.
Mhm.
You know, your mother's,
Mhm.
your mother.
Mhm.
I have the two little pictures sitting on my dresser.
Mhm.
Oh, good.
This is the building that we rented in Tampa. We paid $100 a month on, and then didn't have the rent. You know.
Can you imagine paying $100 a month for that huge
Yeah,
building?
I know it. 52 rooms. In
The whole building?
Mm-hmm.
It's just amazing.
Now I can tell you a little story about. There was a big yard on this side that had a fence around it. A vacant lot. Well, this building was on one block. That's from this street over to the next street. It was one block, and this was just on one corner.
Mhm.
The girls used to play along the sidewalk. The boys had this big field over here where they played for baseball and so forth. That was the Tampa Orchestra.
Mm.
Now that was on the side of the big building there that you saw in there. And here it is. There.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the yard. There was our first car there. And this was the yard there. Well, we built onto the back of the building. I don't think it shows it here. I don't think I have a picture. And we built a nursery upstairs on the second floor. Back at the back of the building was connected onto the building. And underneath we built 2 schoolrooms. And I went all over Tampa looking for desks to put in those schoolrooms for the first and second grade. None to be had in Tampa. Couldn't find them anywhere. So a day or two, I don't know whether it was the next day or a day or two, some man came up the street up this way, coming down this way. And he came up to the house and he said to Dad, do you care if we go across your lot? Catty corner across your lot there. That would bring them from this corner back on the other side of the building, back of the building to the next street. We're moving a house down here, and we got it down at the corner. If we come up this way and go down that way, we have to fool around with, turn, and have to fool around with wires and so forth. Where if we could cut across your lot, we wouldn't have any of that to do with. And Dad said, well, it'd be all right if you put the fence back up when you get through. I said, well, they'd do that. He said, what are you doing? And he said, well, the house was used over here at the public school. It was 2 or 3 blocks. Belonged to some man, and they were using it for a schoolroom for the public school children in the public school. And Dad, by that time, had gotten down there, and he looked, and the building was full of school desks. And he said, well, what are you going to do with the desks? Oh, he said, discard them. They're no good. So they came right up to our schoolroom door. The boys unloaded the desks from that house into our building. We had enough for 2 rooms at 50 cents a piece.
Isn't that something?
And we couldn't buy them for love nor money anywhere.
And you had them delivered to the door.
Yeah, it didn't cost us anything.
Well, why couldn't you use these rooms? These were all bedrooms?
All bedrooms.
I see.
And the girls all roomed on the 2nd floor and the boys on the 3rd floor.
How many children did you have?
104.
Now, how did that get started? You've told that before,
Well,
but I would like to hear it again.
Mother and Dad and your mother had gone to town, and I was there by myself. And the great began to building all by myself.
This is when you all came back from Leesburg.
Yes,
when you and Mother.
after we got back from Leesburg. And some woman came to bring us milk, I think it was, she was delivering. And she said, what are you going to do with this building? I said, I don't know. We just rented it. We don't know. Whatever the Lord wants us to do, we'll do. She said, would you consider taking a boy that doesn't have any home to live in? Said his mother works and she has the little girl with her. The little girl was 10, I think, and the little boy was 12. And said he doesn't have any place but just around on the streets. She said, will you take him? I said, well, I'll ask my father and mother when they come home from town about it. Next morning, the mother showed up with the boy in his clothes.
Didn't have a chance to
No,
ask.
didn't have a chance. I told him about it, but there it was dumped in our lap. And so from then on, it just grew. And they knew somebody. They knew a lady who had TB, and she had 4 children. Her husband was dead, and the health department wouldn't let her keep the children on account of her having TB. So she brought her 4 out there. Then there was the mother of this child, and there were 2 girls, and they were divorced, and neither one of their father who had married somebody else, his wife didn't want them, and their mother who married some man, he didn't want the girls, so they brought the 2 girls out there. So here they are, all those first children that we had, you see, that we took in. This was the first boy that we took, the boy that she brought the clothes for. These are the little Cuban children whose mother had TB. These are the 2 boys, and this is one girl, and this is the other girl. And this was one girl, and this is the other girl, these 2 sisters. So they were the 3 first families that we had.
Well, now, how did Grandfather get the idea of coming out to Crystal Beach?
Well,
How did
the
that
thing
happen?
of it was, all the place they had to play was, like I said,
On the street, and that
you
lot.
see, and that lot. And so we decided, you see this book's laying out, along here. And we decided, in the streets, it was hot. So we decided we'd look around and see if we could find a place that was out of the city. And we went down here. We looked at, you know where Trinity College is in town? We were down in Dunedin. And all that place along the water here, where those motels and things are, we looked at the building there. But that wasn't exactly what we wanted. We looked at the big hotel in Ozona and didn't like that. And while we were in Ozona, the man said, well, there's a place up at Crystal Beach, but he said, I expect it'd be too expensive, more than you would want to pay. So we went on back to Tampa.
This was in 1928.
And we went on back to Tampa. And the agent that was had this building out here at Tampa, at Crystal Beach, you know which one it is that I show, the old building here that, you know which one it is.
Yeah.
This
The
one.
old hotel.
And he heard that we were looking for a building, so he made a trip over to Tampa to tell us about it.
Oh.
And he said, I'll meet you out there and let you look at it. It never had made a success as a hotel out here because there was no bus that ran here, and people were stranded. They just couldn't get to buy anything or do anything, so it didn't make a go as a hotel.
Now, this had the Depression hit already?
Well, in 28. We'd had more or less some kind of a real estate
Boom.
boom and then
crash.
fall. Yes, crash before that. But the Depression was a little later than that.
Oh, I thought this hotel had gone broke during that crash.
No,
of the real estate
it just
market.
never made a success as a
I
hotel.
see.
And the reason was because they were way out here, like in the country, and there was no store here, not anything, you know, where they could even get out of here if they didn't have a car. And elderly people that came down from the north on the train were just stuck here, and that was it. So it never made a success. So we looked at the building. The minute we walked in the front door, we said, that's it. Mother and Dad said, that was it. Didn't even have to look at the rest of it. So he made arrangements for Mother and Dad to go up and meet Mr. Arnold, Mr. and Ms. Arnold, in Tarpon Springs
Now,
on Saturday.
Who was Mr. and Mrs. Arnold?
He was the owner of the building.
And had he built this hotel?
No,
Oh.
he and another man owned it.
Okay.
And so made arrangements for them to go up on Saturday to meet Mr. Arnold and talk with him about it. Well, Mother and Dad went up to meet him, and when he found out we had children, he said no, he would not rent to children. They just put spoons and everything else down the toilets and ruin the plumbing and ruin everything else. Mother said, no, just wait a minute. He said, not our children. And so they rented the building to us for $100 a month. So that was on Saturday. Tuesday we were living in the building. We moved on Tuesday afternoon.
Dowdy.
We paid our
Now,
first
were there
month's
beds and things here already?
Yes, because it was furnished as a hotel.
So you just moved in?
Moved in. We bought all our baby beds and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But aside from that, the beds were here, single beds too, and so they didn't have to be on double beds.
Now, what did you do with the building then in Tampa?
Well, we rented. Somebody else took over the mission for a while, and then they closed it completely because they were not.
They couldn't make it go
They couldn't
with it.
make it very well.
Okay, so you got moved in on Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday, and that was 50 years ago. Last year.
50 years ago in
June last year, June the 28th, 1978.
June 28th,
1978.
1978.
No, yes.
Was 50-year anniversary.
And no, it wasn't June the 28th. It was June the 13th, 1928.
1928.
Mm-hmm. But it was 50 years ago, you see, last year.
Can you tell about how the workers came and how, did you move, all right, you moved all the children that were living with you
Not
out
all of
here.
them. We only brought, now these are the ones we brought. These are the ones that we brought down here.
Mm-hmm.
Only those that belonged to the mission. Those that didn't belong to the mission went back to their parents. You see, we had a lot of children that were from broken homes.
Mm-hmm.
And they went back to their parents, you know, or whoever it was. But the children that belonged to the home, that grew up in the home,
Mm-hmm.
are the ones that came down here.
Well,
now
now-
here they are. Here's the group.
Uh-huh.
Here. That's the way they looked when we moved down here. And here, these were the babies.
Faith Mission thrived at Crystal Beach in Pinellas County for many years and gave hundreds of orphan children a healthy and safe environment to learn and grow in. Irene Dowdy Markert was born on October 5, 1897, and passed away on February 25, 1989. Margaret Ann Bredemeyer Erdman was born on July 4, 1937, and passed away on April 27, 1994. Both contributed so much to the success of Faith Mission, and we are forever thankful for their dedication to such a worthwhile cause.